Last year, I read 25 books. Some of those books were self-help and some of those books were no help. And today we are going to be ranking all of them so that you guys know which books are actually worth your time to read this year. Because reading takes a lot of time and nobody wants to waste their time on a bad book. And you might be wondering, well, how exactly are you going to know what the good book is versus the bad book? And that is where we bring in the beloved tier list. That is right. So today I'm going to be putting all 25 books I read last year on this tier list spectrum so that you guys know which books are worth your time and which ones aren't. Starting at the top here, as you can see, we have S+. That is the best of the best, going down into a must-read, a very good book that you definitely still need to be reading, even though it might not be S+ level. Pretty good, as in, the book's just pretty good. And then a one-time read, like maybe worth reading, maybe not. I mean, I read it once, I'm not going to pick it up again. And then mediocre books, take it or leave it. Honestly, these are where it starts to get into, I would not recommend you guys to read these books. And then lastly, at the bottom, the complete waste of time books, the books that you absolutely should not be picking up, in my opinion. I'm not some reading expert, I'm just a dude who reads books, so take my opinion with a grain of salt. But getting right into it with the first book, this book, I don't know why it got cut off, but it is actually Contagious. This is about viral marketing. It's very cool. If you're into social media, I would definitely recommend that you read it. I'm going to put this book in the pretty good category. And the reason I put it in pretty good is because it was a pretty good book. And I don't put it in must read because unless you're interested in marketing or social media or creating a product maybe, it's probably not going to be the best book for you to read. You probably won't find a ton of value in it, but I really liked it, so I'm putting it in pretty good. And the second book up here, we have Confessions of an Economic Hitman. So as you can see, these books are kind of all over. Like I said in the beginning, some self-help, some fiction in here, some novellas, some books about food, some books about starting a business. We even have books like 1984 in here. So I like to think I have a pretty well-rounded view on books that I like and dislike. This year I'm trying to read more. If you have any book recommendations, put them in the comments, by the way. Confessions of an Economic Hitman. This I'm going to put into also pretty good, and not quite as good as Contagious just because it's a little bit harder to read. And I thought it was really cool to read about this book and just how these governments interact with, developing countries. And I was recently in Panama, and what the book talked about, I actually got to see in real life. When he wrote this, it might have been in the 80s or something like that when he did this, but you could see the effects of what he was talking about. And that totally solidified the book for me. So if you're into how countries interact, it's definitely a little bit of a harder read, but it is entertaining. He tells it kind of like a spy thriller sort of thing. So if you are into that, then definitely read that. Next up, we have The Millionaire Fastlane. So this book, it's complicated. The main takeaway I had from this book was you have to impact millions to make millions. And obviously it's impacting millions of people, influencing them to make millions of dollars, which is cool, but there's a lot of typos in this book, and it's like, if I'm reading a book, why are there so many typos? Like, you probably should have had someone proofread it. Definitely hurt the credibility of this book by quite a bit, and I'm gonna put it in a one-time read because I don't think it's like a bad book. I don't think it's quite mediocre because this guy obviously is making money, and a lot of it, but I don't know, for anyone who wants to be a millionaire, maybe read that book once, maybe don't. And then next up, Ikigai. I had a video about this not too long ago. I actually really do like this book, and it's all about the way of life of a certain demographic of people, which is always good to get to know people who are different from yourself and how they live, and it has a lot of cool practices. I could give it S+, I really could, but I don't think I'm going to quite do that. I don't think it quite gets there on this, so I'm going to put it in the must read. I still think it's a great book. I have a video about that on my channel, but not quite an S+. Don't worry though, there is an S+ coming, and it's going to be a really good book that you guys are going to have to read. Next up, In Defense of Food. Very controversial book. I like this book. My friends don't like this book at all. I tried to recommend it to them. They thought it was the most boring thing ever. So automatically, I'm going to put this one in mediocre because it is a little out there. It is very much about food science and how processed foods affect you. Honestly, like, not the most interesting topics for a lot of people. I've been told that I like to read harder books, and that is definitely a harder book to read just because it's very academic, not the most interesting. So I'm going to put it in mediocre. Like, if you like those academic books, read it. If you don't, then don't read it. But it does have some really interesting information about how food is made nowadays and all the legal suits to get food to what it is today, which is very, very interesting, in my opinion. Next up, we have an absolute classic. This is Meditations by Marcus Aurelius. Again, not sure why this one got all messed up, but This book is really good. It is a philosophy book that I feel like has a lot of really good information in it. For those who don't know, Marcus Aurelius was a Stoic philosopher. He practiced Stoicism, he popularized it, and it's actually different from what a lot of people think Stoicism is today. So if you want a good view on what Stoicism really is and not what it's been construed to be on social media, I would definitely read this. I'm going to put it in must read because it is a timeless book. You absolutely must read it. Next up, The 7 Habits of Highly Effective People. This book, I don't like it. I don't like this book at all. To be honest with you, I think it is a waste of time. And it's not the worst book I've ever read, but it is like 400 pages too long. This book is over 400 pages, and I feel like everything that he's saying could be explained in under 100 pages. I feel like he honestly is just trying to hit a word count, and with the new like forewords and postwords by his children, I don't like that book. I don't think I got value out of it. Maybe you will, but I'm putting it in complete waste of time, which I know might be controversial. That book is super popular, and that's why I read it, and I'm here to say I don't like it. So, sorry, Steven. Next up, we have Influence. Now, this book is pretty interesting. It really dives into the notion of what makes people say yes. That's kind of what this book is all about. What makes somebody an influential person? What makes somebody non-influential? What are the actions you can take to become slightly more influential? I don't know if it's necessarily like behavioral training, or like it doesn't really get into anything too crazy, but it really is all about how do you make someone say yes to something that you want. If you're trying to sell something or you need something done, how do you get them to go from no or maybe to that yes? And I think the book is really valuable for that. I'm going to put it in one-time read because it is pretty difficult to read if you are not already an experienced reader. And as you can see in the corner of this video, I do have a difficulty scale for each of these books that I'm talking about, so that way you know on the books that I'm talking about what I perceive the difficulty to be read at. So if you're someone who's new to reading, let's say you haven't been back in 5 years, easy is going to be easy for you, where I feel like it's plain language, it's very approachable to get back into, and if you're on the hard side of things like that Influence book, you just got to be reading consistently. Honestly, you can honestly read any of these books, but it will take a little more time to just really comprehend and understand everything that is being said in the book. Coming up next, we have The Alchemist. So this book, right off the bat, I'm going to say it's pretty freaking good. It is quite a good book. So it's a novella, which means it is very short. I think it's under 150 pages. I read this earlier last year, so I can't quite remember exactly how many pages it is, but it is a fictitious story. This is the first fiction book we have on this entire list, but let me tell you what, it is really good. It is so good, in fact, that it is going to be our first S+. That is right. It is that good. It really is. I love this book so much because it is so simple and the story in it is so timeless. It's about finding your purpose and meaning in life, and it's one that also has a super sick cover, and so even if you just want to collect the book, it has a really cool cover art. This story is old as all old stories. It's from Paulo Coelho. This would be almost a classic novel. I would say it is all about chasing your dreams and figuring out what you want to do. And I think it's very easy and digestible for any level of reader. And then taking a total 180 on the book scale, here is Betrayal. It's all about the Bernie Madoff scam. If you don't know who Bernie Madoff was, he basically ran the world's largest Ponzi scheme. Well, I guess second largest after the, Sam Bankman-Fried FTX scandal that recently happened. Pretty much the second largest financial crime scandal on earth. This book, if you're into finance, I'm going to say it's really good. I had a great time reading it. I thought it was super interesting, a very approachable terminology, and they explain it all in very plain language. I'm going to put this book in a medium difficulty just because it does have a lot of through plots and stuff, but I will say it tells it all like a story, like it's happening right alongside you. And it goes chapter by chapter, moment by moment, and it talks about what Bernie Madoff was doing, what's going on, and like how he wasn't caught for so long. Very interesting book. I'm going to put it in the must read, even though it is a financial book. If you're a little bit older of a reader, you should absolutely read that book. I think you'll find a really interesting story about financial crime in it. And then this book next up is The Last Lecture by Randy Pausch. Randy Pausch was diagnosed with terminal cancer when he wrote this book, and it basically recounts what he claimed to be the final lessons that he would want to give somebody before he passed away. It is a very emotional book, it is a very good book, and it is a very easy read. And I'm not gonna lie, at the end, I definitely was feeling something about it. I really like this book. I'm gonna put it in the pretty good category because I think you guys should definitely read it. I wouldn't say it's absolutely a must read, but it is a very emotional book. And yeah, guys, as you can see, my taste is all over the place. And this next one is no different. This is a classic book as well, 1984 by George Orwell. This book is really good. I hadn't read it until this year. You know, I feel like there's so many references online about literally 1984. And I never understood what that was about until I read this book. And I must say, it's really good. And I think a lot of what is happening in this book maybe could be applied to some things happening today, maybe. But I'm going to put this book in the must read. As you can see, I'm pretty fond of the books I've read. I mean, everything up here is pretty good. Everything down here, like these bottom three, not so great, but as you can see, so far so good. All of the books I really liked this year, and that is just kind of how it goes with reading. Like, not every book is going to be an absolute 100% home run, but that's why you just keep reading. You find the next book, you know? Now, here comes in another big hitter. This, while it says Happiness Advantage, it's actually The Happiness Advantage. A very good book, very, very good book about framing everything to just be an opportunity instead of an obligation. I think it's really helped me reframe how I do a lot of things. And I'm already going S+. I'm not even going to hide it from you guys. I think this book is so good. I really, really do like it. And I think it's a good read for anybody. It's a very easy read too. And it's not anything like toxic positivity, like framing things in your life to be more positive, to help you get more done and ultimately live a more fulfilled life, which that statement alone is like, yeah, everybody should be reading that so that they can get that benefit too. It pretty much begs the question of everyone trying to be so successful right now. It's, does success create happiness or does happiness create success? Gotta read the book to find out, right? And then going into a book that I didn't love it, Crystallizing Public Opinion. I was not huge on this book, I gotta be honest. I'm gonna put it in waste of time. I think, honestly, the book was way too hard to read for no reason. The language that they were using and all that, I was like, what is going on in this book? And so pretty much what is going on. Not gonna spend a lot of time on it. I put it in waste of time because I don't think you should read it. Next up, The Entrepreneur Mind. This book, it's 100 key steps to what makes a good entrepreneur. As you guys know, if you've been around the channel, I want to start my own business one day. And so I read material on it from people who are already entrepreneurs in hopes that they have something, you know, pretty interesting to tell me. The book claims that it's gonna level up your entrepreneurial game. And I gotta be honest, I read this book, maybe I retained some things, but I don't remember much of it, so honestly, it's going in mediocre. Hate to say it, sorry, but it's going in mediocre. And then this book coming up, this is a pretty interesting book. So to my US citizens, I have a question. Have you ever wondered where the eggs and bacon for breakfast thing came from? Have you ever wondered, like, why we do that? It hasn't always been like that, and in fact, this book talks about the people who set up that whole marketing scheme to then create a staple breakfast meal now in the United States. And this is another one where I think if anyone's interested in marketing or maybe even psychology, the book does get into some of that. It would be a really good book for you to read. You know, I don't think it's going to be everybody's cup of tea. It's a little more on the academic side, I will say. It is definitely on the academic side, but I still really like it. Honestly, I do. I do like the book. I like the book quite a bit, but I'm gonna put it in pretty good. It's not a must read, but it is pretty interesting. And like I said, it goes into the story of like how advertisers impact a lot of what you do and just how much they try and influence your decisions. So it's good to be aware of something like that. It's pretty cool. Now here comes a fiction book. This might be the second fiction book all day. I did not read enough fiction. I'm gonna try and read more fiction. In fact, this is the latest book I'm reading right now. As you can see, I'm like maybe halfway into it. I started reading it like 2 days ago. Really like it though. Very good. It's Asimov Foundation. Asimov is, I don't know if he's considered like the founder of science fiction, but he is very influential in the science fiction industry. So I can link that book. I'm going to link all these books, but I'll link that book too, even though that's kind of like an unreleased tier list rating. Right now I'm putting it in the must read category. But yeah, Hidden Persuaders, that's going to go on the pretty good. The Magic of Thinking Big. Now this, while it might look a little clickbaity, might look a little scammy, you could say, it's S+. It is absolutely S+. Similar to the Happiness Advantage, about you have to be very cognizant of how you think about yourself and how you think about tasks in your day. And the only thing that keeps a salesman from selling $200,000 versus selling $40,000 is his belief in himself. And that actually is research to back it in this book, which from the first page I was hooked, because he started with that claim of the only difference between the hyper successful and the mildly successful is their belief in themselves. And he has the science to back it up, which I really like, which makes it an S+ book. These 3 books so far, S+ to me means they have actually changed how I go about my day-to-day life. And there are not many books that do that. That's why there's only 3 up here so far. Then next up here is Originals, another book about how the Martin Luther King Jr.'s of the world created their beautiful speeches, or how the Da Vinci's created their beautiful art. And it's very interesting for anyone who wants to be a creative. Very, very interesting. I'm putting it in the pretty good because it is really useful for those of you who want to be creative or to create something for yourself. Has a lot of really good sentiment. I'm not going to spoil anything in that book because I think you guys definitely should read it if you're into forging your own path, entrepreneurship, being creative, musicians, things like that. Definitely read this book. Then going up, Weapons of Math Destruction. It's all about AI. It's Kathy O'Neill was somebody who worked on Facebook's early algorithm. And as you know, social media nowadays is all algorithm for entertainment purposes or whatever it may be, but ultimately to feed you the videos that keep them on their site, like this video. Not to get too meta with it, but like there's a reason you're watching this video right now. I'm gonna put it in one-time read. She gets a little too doom and gloom, and I don't know. The book kind of lost me at parts. It's very middle of the road in terms of difficulty to read, but The $100 Startup. This is another book, automatic must read. It's all about entrepreneurship. So if you're an entrepreneurship person, you want to be an entrepreneur, must read, absolutely. $100 Startup. I used the advice from this book to start this channel. I started filming on my phone. All I did was buy one little light, one little floating light that was like $30 off Amazon, and that was it. That's all I bought. I didn't even buy a crazy microphone or anything, and I took the advice where it basically says, just get going. It's like get started, get good, and then get fast. The book doesn't say it word for word, but it does emphasize that you don't need a ton of capital to start up every single business. Now, some you absolutely do need a lot of capital to start, but a very good book. And then we have Man's Search for Meaning by Viktor E. Frankl. This book is really good. He's a Holocaust survivor who had a lot of bad things happen to him, and he also started doing psychology work before he was put in those detention camps and things like that for the Holocaust. I really like this book. I'm going to put it as another must read because there's a lot of really, really strong value. Almost S+, but I'm going to keep it a must read because it's not quite that elusive S+, but it is a very, very good book. And then we only have 3 more, guys. We're going down to the final 3. I saved some of the 3 best books for last, by the way. Think and Grow Rich. Listen, some people might not agree with absolutely everything this book has to say, but there is a reason that people hype it up so much and always are talking about this book. It is not a scam. I really do think, similar to these books right here, it is absolutely a mindset book that if you take what it says to heart and you actually write down the stuff that it tells you to write down, you will see results. I'm starting to see those results, and I know you will too if you buy that book and you read it, all right? Then coming up, the 12-week year, I have a video about this book. My opinion has changed slightly on it. I think it's pretty good. Actually, no, I changed my mind. I'm putting it in the one-time read category because I don't think it's as crazy as everyone makes it out to be. I thought it was a crazy book when I made that video on it. I don't know. You're like time blocking everything. I just haven't been able to do it yet. Now, maybe I'll revisit this 12 weeks from now when I start to do it next, and I'll be totally wrong and I'll eat my words. That's fine, but for now, it's going in one-time read because this is my video and it's my opinion. Final book, I saved one of the best for last, Shoe Dog by Phil Knight. What a good story. He writes it himself. It's a memoir about how he started Nike. Phil Knight is the founder of Nike, and hearing the story about how he goes to Japan and he finds these suppliers, and these suppliers, they backstab him, and that's all I'm gonna say, because after that, we're getting into crazy spoilers. But imagine that storyline for pages and pages and pages. And this book, I think, was like 500 some odd pages, but I read it in a span of 3 days because it was that good, it's that easy to read, and it was that entertaining. So I'm gonna put Shoe Dog in the must-read category. So as you guys can see, this is our completed tier list. These books are the ones that I read last year. Let me know if you want me to go any more in-depth on some of those books. Comment your book recommendations, please. I need book recommendations. I don't know what to read right now. I'm gonna link all of these in the description in case you want to purchase any of these books. I'm gonna try and find the cheapest prices for you guys too. Normally it's Amazon, because that's just kind of how Amazon works, is that a lot of their stuff is going to be equal to the cheapest price on the internet. You can also buy these books used, ask a friend for them. I'm sure people have some of these books, so ask around. I know it's been a while since I last posted. I'm sorry, but I'm back. For anyone who doesn't know me, my name's Josh. Like the video, subscribe, all that. See ya.